If we're supposed to be a state that values families, then we should require these companies to not have mandatory overtime and give adequate notice and gain permission if they're going to change your shift.
We have on the line right now Patricia Todd, the Southern Policy Manager for Jobs to Move America, also a former legislator in the state of Alabama. Patricia, welcome to the program.
Issues at
Oh, I'm sorry. We've got you now. Welcome to the program.
Thanks. It's good to be here with you all. We have a lot to cover in these challenging times.
Yes, indeed we do. And we appreciate the work that you're doing here in Alabama. Genuinely, when I send out the email letting folks know that we're live, I mentioned that there's some genuinely hopeful news in the state of Alabama. So hopefully, we've got some more depressing stuff to cover later in the show. But while I think that we're going to be covering mostly good things with you, which is surprising. So let's start with Birmingham. That's the city that you live in, the city that you represented in the legislature. And what we're going to be talking about is a local hire ordinance that was recently passed by the Birmingham City Council. Jobs to Move America was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the primary advocate for this local hire ordinance. So explain to us what the ordinance does and how and what Jobs to Move America's role was in getting it passed.
Well, we've been working on this for a year and a half with the city, starting with the mayor's office and then the chair of the Economic Development Committee. And it's focused on the infrastructure money that's going to come into the municipalities and states. And we wrote a resolution that requires to require their contractors to hire at least 30% of employees from the Birmingham metro area, and then 15% from pre-apprenticeship programs. Now, it wasn't as forceful as we wanted, but it's a step. It's the first one in Alabama. We would have liked to see it included minimum wage scale, priority hiring of people from marginalized communities. But this is a beginning, and it passed unanimously.
Wow.
And so we're moving on to another city to see if we can get the same thing done.
And so this is only related to federal funds. I saw that the federal funds were mentioned in your press statements about it. So this is not generally applicable to Birmingham construction expenditures. This is just about any money that we're getting from these federal infrastructure dollars. We're going to prioritize hiring local Birmingham residents.
Here's the problem we have in Alabama. The Alabama legislature has power to preempt local resolutions or laws. And years ago, the city of Birmingham passed a resolution to have raise the minimum wage in Birmingham to $15. The state legislature preempted it, so they couldn't do it. So we have to be very careful in how we, and these funds allow for local hire, but that's why we can't expand it to be just all contracting. We hope in the future that we can. This is taxpayers' money, and the one thing that we focus on at Jobs to Move America is that when jobs are created through taxpayer funds, whether it be through procurement, contracting, or economic tax incentives, that they must be good jobs and go to people who really need them. And that's, the basis of the resolution. And the city council members got it because we have a high poverty rate in Birmingham and a high unemployment rate. And so the pre-apprenticeship programs will give some of those people access to good skill training to be used down the road. So it is a win. It's a major victory. And we hope other municipalities will, follow suit.
And so there's thinking that because this resolution is related to federal funds that come into the city, that maybe the legislature doesn't have authority to preempt the city's distribution of federal funds. Is that the thinking?
Correct. Correct. The way that the funding was worded by the Biden administration allowed for local hire. Now, we're obviously in dangerous territory moving
Mm-hmm.
forward because we do not know what the current administration is going to do in regard to things like this. It's a very scary time.
Right, right. And so the and that you mentioned that the and so what you're referring to there is that payments to or that expenditures of funds related to at least as I understand it, the Inflation Reduction Act and the bipartisan infrastructure law have been stopped by the Trump administration so far, and I don't think that we're going to have time to do a whole big breakdown of it later. But this is already resulting in the elimination of jobs in Somerset, Massachusetts. There's local reporting about how a proposed factory that project has already been nixed, and that's killed 200 to 350 jobs in just that one smaller city in Massachusetts. And this kind of stuff is going on all across the country. And so, what kind of impact are you anticipating that this is going to have on the city of Birmingham?
Well, we don't know. I mean, that's the honest truth. I mean, every day we're shocked by something this current administration does. Um, and all of this will end up in federal courts and have to be sorted out on that level, which is going to take a lot of time and energy. Meanwhile, we have a couple of bills we're supporting in the upcoming legislative session that starts next week. Um, this is going to be a rough time, and we focus on, again, creating good jobs and increasing accountability and transparency in government. So we have a bill that was introduced last year that almost passed. Nobody voted against it. It was just a matter of timing that would claw back incentives from companies who found guilty of child labor. And you all just talked about child labor. It's been a real problem in the Hyundai supply chain. And so this is a way for us to sort of talk about that. And I think it will pass this year pretty quickly. It's Senate Bill 22 by Senator Coleman. The other ones we have is this is something interesting. I just found out that there is a state law that requires temporary staffing agencies that are very predatory to be licensed by the Department of Revenue. But when I talk to the Department of Revenue, they're not enforcing the law. So we're introducing a bill that requires them to follow the law and to license these temporary staffing agencies. They're not, these temporary staffing agencies take money from the workers they place in there. They're just very predatory. Another one we have is called a pro-family workplace requirement. If you work in manufacturing and they have a 3-shift rotation, a lot of times you'll show up for work and in the middle of your shift, you're required to work overtime. And then they also can change your shift without a lot of notice and without your permission, which has a huge impact on family time. If we're supposed to be a state that, values families, then we should require these companies to not have mandatory overtime and to give adequate notice and gain permission if they're going to change your shift. You can imagine if you've got little kids that are playing in sports or you have childcare needs, having your shift change or mandatory overtime can have an adverse effect on your family. Now, do I think this is going to pass? No, but I think we need to start pushing legislators to understand that you have got to hold these companies accountable and make sure that families are not adversely affected by their management style. Um, we also are supporting a bill to mandate the Department of Commerce to list any clawbacks. And a clawback is like if I give, $1 million to Hyundai and they don't meet the requirements of the agreement, we can um, claw back some of those incentives. But right now, we don't know who they've clawed back incentives from. So we're requesting them to do that. And then the other one is to remove the exemption from the Open Records Act for incentive agreements and their annual reports. These are all held in secret. Even legislators don't have access to it. So we're going to try to see if we can fix that. There's so much work to do around these issues.
Hey, 5 seconds, just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
And so we've already we've jumped into JMA's legislative agenda. You've been talking about some of the priorities that Jobs to America has for the upcoming legislative session. You mentioned the child labor clawback bill, that's SB 22, sponsored by State Senator Marika Coleman, and you mentioned several other policy priorities. Have any of the others have bills been filed on any of the others yet? And if so, what are the bill numbers, just for reference for folks?
They will be filed this week, so I can get numbers. I also want to mention that I'm doing an advocacy training. A lot of people don't understand how the legislature works and how they can be an effective advocate. And so that will be Tuesday night at 6 via Zoom. If people are interested, they can contact me at ptodd@jobstomoveamerica.org. And it's free. And because I've been a legislator before, I know how that system works. Whereas other people don't understand what really happens in the back room. And I served for 12 years, so I sort of bring my expertise into this training.
And I'm sure that we'll have some listeners that will be attending that. Look forward to hearing what comes out of that, and look forward to seeing those bills be filed. The House Democratic Caucus, the minority party, obviously in the state of Alabama, the Democrats in the state House have released their kind of legislative platform for the 2025 legislative session. I know that at least on the child labor clawback bill, the bill that would revoke tax incentives from employers who violate child labor law, you feel very confident about that. I want you to, if you would, explain why you feel confident about the passage of that, considering that I did not see that named in the Democrats' platform, nor any of these other legislative priorities that Jobs to America has. Now there is some that I think that you could fit some of these specific bills under the broad priorities. It's like the legislative thing for the Democrats is like a bunch of big concept words, like freedom and liberty and stuff. And so there are ways that you can kind of fit some of your priorities under these. So why do you feel confident specifically about the child labor bill? And does it concern you that none of JMA's priorities are specifically mentioned in the Democratic legislative agenda?
Well, if you look at both the Republican and Democratic agendas, they're very general. They're wordy. They're supposed to like justice and freedom, and who's going to oppose that? But they didn't list any specific legislation in either one of them. Last year, when this bill was introduced, it passed out of the Senate committee and out of the Senate and House committee unanimously. We just ran out of time, so that's why I feel positive it's going to pass this year. And let's be honest, who's going to be for child labor? I mean, it's a pretty easy issue. And of course, the Department of Labor has sued Hyundai and their supply chain. Of course, that's making its way through the courts. We don't know what's going to happen with that. But this just sort of gives us an opportunity to talk about the problem in manufacturing in Alabama, and that many of these plants are using child labor.
Right, right. Well, we're really looking forward to, seeing some of these priorities pass through and get through the legislature. Hopefully that will happen. I know that, labor will be a big supporter of this. Who do you see as some of the groups and constituencies that are going to have the best ability to kind of persuade, because it's going to have to take persuasion of the Republican supermajority to get any of this through? How is that going to happen?
Well, one of our biggest allies is Alabama Rise. I notice you have their T-shirt on. Uh, we work very closely with them, so they'll be a great benefit. And we have a lot of local unions that are involved. The real issue is people do not contact their legislators for whatever reason. They don't know who they are. They think, well, they don't agree with me, so they're not going to listen to me, but you've got to use your voice. And other allies we work with very closely is Greater Birmingham Ministries, NAACP, you all. We have a lot of environmental groups that are engaged in our work. So we probably have about 32 organizations involved in the coalition that we work all this stuff with. But Alabama Rise is our strongest ally.
Alabama Rise does really good work. Obviously, just for full disclosure, Adam does work for Alabama Rise. He's the Northeast Alabama organizer, but I do not. And I think that they're definitely one of the best organizations down there. The pro-worker nonprofit advocacy organizations, working with the legislature. They do really great work, research, advocacy, and the whole thing. So, and what you mentioned about not contacting their legislator, I mean, like 80%, Adam says, of people don't know who their legislator is. So, definitely you want to get acquainted with that, and you want to make sure that your legislator knows which of these priorities, if any, that you support. And frankly, I think that all of these priorities are really very, very common sense things. Exactly like you said, this is all mostly attached to funding, public funds from the state of Alabama, from the citizens of Alabama, from the workers of Alabama. And where my dollars are concerned, I do not want my dollars going to pay for the exploitation of children. I do not want my dollars going to underpay workers while CEOs and executives make off like bandits and make millions and millions of dollars from state contracts while their workers are on food stamps. That's not the kind of work that I want to fund or incentivize with public funds, and I do not believe that is a radical proposition. I think that actually, if you talk to most people, no matter who they voted for in November, they would agree with that sentiment. They would agree with the idea that if my money is going towards something, collectively, the public funds of the state of Alabama is going towards to pay for services, to pay for goods or services, we should want those goods and services to be produced by people being paid good wages with good benefits and things like that. And it shouldn't be just for people at the top of these contractors to get rich. That's not a very radical kind of
it is common sense. Alabama has a high poverty rate due to a lot of factors, including not adequately funding public education. Housing is expensive. It is, and when you pay workers more, everybody benefits. They have more spending money, so the economy improves. It's not fair that a CEO could make I don't know, $5 million, and a worker's working for 13 bucks an hour, producing the product they sell. So we've got a lot of work to do. And if people don't know who your legislator is, you can go to the Alabama Secretary of State's office, enter your address, and it'll give you contact information about who they are. And you've got to do that. It takes 10 minutes to contact your legislator.
Thank you so much for your time, Patricia Todd. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that you leave our listeners with before we let you go?
Yeah, I just appreciate what y'all do and having these open discussions, and I look forward to continuing to work with you.
Same to you. Patricia Todd, Southern Policy Manager for Jobs to Move America. Really appreciate your time on the show today. Definitely, folks should check out Jobs to Move America and the work that they're doing. They do lots of really good work, and you know, you can get involved in the stuff that they're doing. So thank you so much.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.